Today we've got confused man, me, rides confused motorcycle. The confused motorcycle being this 2018 Harley-Davidson Street Rod 750. And if you like it, don't get too attached because Harley's already discontinued it. A motorcycle that I actually like, obviously they stopped making. It makes sense, right? But it is indeed a confused motorcycle. I say that because it doesn't really seem like it knows what it wants to be, or like Harley knew what they wanted it to be. But nevertheless, we're back with another one take. So that means no cuts, no editing. We've got two cameras, the POV GoPro on my chin, a 360 camera on the handlebars so that you don't get too bored. But it's a struggle for me because I love editing and I suck at talking. So that's why it's a challenge for me, and that's why I enjoy it. But today we're going to take this for a ride. We start at our usual one take starting point, and I actually love how this bike looks. See, I'm already struggling with talking. But in case you didn't know, I'm not a Harley-Davidson fan at all. This is the first Harley I've ever ridden or owned. And yes, if you do know Harley-Davidsons, you will have already said this isn't much of a Harley. And that's the first reason why it's a confused bike. It's not much of a Harley. It's not very sporty, even though it's trying to be. It's just, it doesn't really know where it fits in. We've got upside down forks, twin discs on the front, and then these funny little twin shocks that don't work well at all on the back. I mean, it really is a contrast. But other than that, it looks beautiful. I love how it's blacked out. I love this three-piece mudguard. We've got like the strut in the middle and a piece on each end. It looks cool, and it would be very easy to wrap as a result. So well done, Harley. Then we have, well, the other thing I enjoy is we have what looks to be the exact same brake disc or rotor on the front and the rear. You don't see that too often, but I guess it works. It looks cool. Well, it doesn't need to work well because, you know. We've also got a very simple swing arm for a sporty bike. It's like they paid more attention to the front of the bike than the rear. Then the thing I hate and love, and it's very confusing, is this tornado exhaust, because it's a 750. It's not that loud, but now it's straight through with this megaphone on the end. It basically just amplifies the noise. And it's the loudest bike I have ever owned. It's probably the second loudest bike I've ever ridden. The first one being my dad's Super Duke, the 1290R. I think it was a 2015. It was also basically straight through, ridiculously loud. But this one hurts my brain more. I don't know what it is. You'll see when we're riding if you can even hear me. But the pops sort of target the front of my head and it really hurts. I don't understand it. It's not something I've ever struggled with before on a bike, getting a headache from the exhaust. It's also the first bike I've ever had with a belt drive. No, I haven't adjusted it. I haven't even looked into it. It seems to be working. You belt drive people tell me if that's okay. One day I'll do the research. But basically the story of this bike was it's a bike I bought. I've never had a Harley. And I made a whole video dedicated to it. And now it's for sale. So I bought it to experience it, to make a video. The same thing I did with the KLR 650 about a month ago. It's my new favorite thing to do, in case you're wondering. So we got to turn the ignition on and disable the alarm. Cute little noise. Then we can put our key fob in our pocket, and then we can go for a ride. It is a strange bike. It's very low. It's very asymmetric. Look at how this tank sticks out. I love the straight bar. There's probably a name for it in the Harley world. To me, it's just a straight handlebar, but I do like it. Then it's kind of hard to move around like this because your right leg sticks out more than your left because of the exhaust. The foot pegs are always sort of in the way, you're kicking them. And the foot pegs aren't actually on a spring, they don't return. Never ridden a bike without springs on the foot pegs. So sometimes you pull off and you hook it, and then you have to like reset it with your foot. It's not the end of the world, but it's kind of annoying. And this brake lever is impossible to get to. So this is obviously where your foot goes, and your heel goes here, so you don't melt it on the exhaust, even though you usually do catch it. You can see some wear marks. And your foot ends up at an angle where you can hardly even press it. This piece sort of gets in the way before you hit the actual pedal. Very strange. But nevertheless, the rest of it is gorgeous. I like all the switches. Not many, nice and simple, but here we go. Okay, we're going to close the visor to shut out as much noise as possible, and then I'm probably going to have to shout because the The last time I filmed a motovlog like this, when I got back I couldn't even hear myself talking, so I ended up having to use subtitles in the main video. But for a Harley, it's ridiculously smooth. This is the 60-degree V-twin. It's very gorgeous, and I absolutely love riding it from a mechanical point of view. The clutch takes exactly where you'd want it. It's not too light, not too heavy, exactly how you'd like it. There's no jerk off the throttle, despite me making it look like that. Ooh, and we already start off with a Focus RS. It's going to be a good ride, I can tell you already. But yes, it's very smooth. The gearbox is beautiful. It is a little bit stiff when you start off and the oil's cold, but it quickly warms up and then it's silky smooth. Not at all how you'd expect a Harley to behave. And these bar end mirrors, I'm going to try to keep the revs low for now, just so that it's as quiet as possible. But believe it or not, the low revs are the frequency that sort of gives you a headache somewhat faster. I'm not wearing earplugs today because I think half of the reason why I couldn't hear myself talk in my last motovlog segment was because when I have earplugs I sort of talk quieter, because I can hear myself in my own head but not through my ears. Sounds silly, but it makes sense to me. But these mirrors, these bar end mirrors, they look beautiful. They're so well made. I love the sort of craftsmanship, and you really can see so nicely out of them. And it is very flickable for a strange looking bike ultimately. But we did, however, pick basically the worst time in the world to make a one take, because there's lots of building happening in this area, as you can tell. And it's in the middle of the winter here. It's in the middle of winter here in the southern hemisphere. So all the grass is dead because we haven't had any rain, which means it all catches fire, so there's lots of burnt sections of grass. It's not pleasant, but nevertheless we have blue sky and a fun little bike to take for a ride. So this tank is a strange thing. You can't grip it with your knees. Well, I can because I'm short. It's got the asymmetric fuel cap that comes off when you fill it up, so sometimes you have to be careful not to lose it, and it's quite tricky to put it back on. But if you own the bike, you'd get the hang of it. And it's definitely the one piece of the bike that was taken off of another bike. It wasn't designed for this. It doesn't fit in very nicely. And I think they worried more about the design of it than the function, because you fill it up very often. And I do think this loud exhaust plays a role with that. It obviously uses more fuel, but it's kind of worth it. So I'll get it to pop now when I downshift, and you can hear the noise that gives me a headache. See, if you downshift, then get back on the throttle, and it just pops. It's fun as a petrol head, but that's about it. So you can see it's not slow. I mean, it's still a 750. It still has a 0 to 60 mile an hour time that is pretty decent. It's plenty fun, but it does make not much horsepower for a 750. But I really do think it's not the worst, not beginner bike, but sort of intermediate bike, because it's very easy to ride. As I said, it's got great controls. It's easy to ride. The only thing that isn't nice is sort of moving it around at low speeds because of the sort of foot pegs and the riding position. And this isn't actually an extreme cruiser position. Like, it's the worst I've ever ridden. It's sort of the only cruiser I've ever ridden. So to me it feels like my feet are out here, when in actual fact Harley riders would probably say this is underneath me, which I disagree. I like my foot pegs sort of underneath me and a bit behind, like a sport bike. So it uses some weird muscles trying to lift your leg off of the ground onto the foot pegs. It's sort of, I don't know, it's strange. If all you've ever ridden is sort of tall sport bikes or the odd dual sports and dirt bike, this is a strange position, and it feels like you really are stretching out in front of you to get to the bars. But on a longer cruise, it works quite well. And for once, I'm not even bothered about there being traffic, because it's not really the type of bike that you want to race around town on. I have tried to ride it hard a few times, and it's not very practical. Because I had it for 3 days and thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm like, maybe this is the answer to life. Maybe a funny little cruiser. They're going to come into my lane. I suggest you don't. But the first 3 days I had it, sort of thing, I really enjoyed it. I'm like, maybe this is for me. It's really relaxing, it's nice, it's loud, but I was still enjoying it because it was new. And then on the 4th day, I had to get somewhere in a hurry, so I tried to ride it fast to get home when I needed to. And that was sort of when it disappointed me. It's not very rewarding when you try to ride it fast, and that's why I love my MT-09. You can go to the store to grab some groceries without overheating, without forcing you to be a monkey. And then when you feel naughty or you're late for something, you can ride it hard and it does it nicely. It's got sort of good brakes and decent suspension and a lovely engine. It makes almost double the horsepower of this, an MT-09, and it only has about 100 cc's more. So that sort of tells you where this is. But another reason it's sort of confused is we have these beautiful twin discs up front, each with their own caliper and steel braided lines. It's got sort of everything you would like associate with decent brakes, and they're not good. It's very strange. I think they mostly did it for the facts or the stats, you know. On the spec sheet you can say it's got twin calipers and upside down forks, but it doesn't mean it's actually good at that. I have to say I can't complain about the front suspension, mainly because you have like no weight over it, and you're so preoccupied with not enjoying the twin rear shocks on the back that you don't really notice them. It is flickable. But at the end of the day, it's just a motorbike with a smooth engine, with 2 wheels, makes a loud noise, you know, ticks all the boxes in terms of what makes a motorbike fun sometimes. And that's why I'm torn between 2 worlds. We're gonna make a hell of a noise, and we're not really going fast. Okay, but I am torn between 2 worlds, because a part of me really likes this bike. I love the direction Harley were going in, and I feel like they got so much right, and it really does make me smile to ride this, to cruise around town. I had a brilliant Sunday cruising around with my girlfriend on the back, and even she enjoyed it. But the main problem is that if somebody came to me wanting a bike, wanting a suggestion for a bike, and describe basically everything that this is, I would probably still say go buy an MT-07, because at the end of the day it does pretty much everything this does, just a little bit better. And that's where I think it struggled. That's why it was discontinued. That's why it didn't sell well, because although it's a very good bike, it just isn't quite as good as some other options. And that's where I think Harley usually struggle. Unless you're a Harley fanatic and buying your traditional Harley-Davidson cruiser, they're hard to recommend. There's nothing wrong with it per se. It's very fun, but it's not the best you could get, even for the price. And it is cheap. At least for a Harley. Okay, now we'll make even more of a noise trundling underground. Well, not underground, but under a roof. And scaring all the children. Well, they should be in school. But I'm sure they're scared sitting in a classroom somewhere, because you can probably hear the rumbling of this from there. Okay, we're almost going to turn it off, and then we'll see if you can hear me again. We can talk like a regular person and not just shout. I do miss having leaves on the trees. I hope summer arrives quickly. The headache hasn't started yet, but I'm sure it's imminent. These grips are funny. They're nice and smooth, but it's kind of strange. Let's get the alarm going. You're going to take a second for me. But anyway, that's pretty much it. There's not too much else to say about it. I don't know where it fits in. It's a confused motorbike, but at the same time, I like it. So the whole point of buying this was to make the whole video dedicated to it. If you haven't seen that, please go watch it. I put a lot of time and effort into it, and I'm having fun making those types of videos. So leave your suggestions down below of what we should get next when we sell the Harley-Davidson, and I'll see you on the next ride.